said it like it was nothing. "I'm not sneaking out," she whispered. "The house is finally quiet." Her hand drifted across the nightstand, past the baby monitor, past the phone on its charger, to the fob that opens our HOA pool gate. The red LED blinked in the dark. Our son snored, a thin ribbon of sound from the next room. I stared at the ceiling and counted the seconds between the quiet and the click. Somewhere outside, a car door closed, the sound thin in the Anchorage cold. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed without lighting up the screen. The alert banner said, "Side door unlocked, 1031 a.m. It wasn't our side door. It was a foreclosed house 2 streets over, the one with the plywood over the window and the realtor sign staked into a snow berm. I know, because I'd set that alert myself when the HOA started getting fines for trash on that block. I know, because my husband had set the keypad code. I didn't jump up. NICU work teaches you that panic is just noise. I lay there and listened to my heart try to unlock my ribs. My husband breathed even and heavy, the way he does when his body has made a promise to the morning. His name is Reed. He's an electrician who can make old houses think they're young again, which is a kind of magic you love until you realize it can be used anywhere. 30 minutes later, my Nest doorbell pinged. Person. Then my dash cam app, which I'd installed 2 winters ago after a hit and run in the hospital parking lot, pushed a thumbnail of headlights leaving our driveway. Reed's truck. The thumbnail showed the reflection of the ring of ice around our curb. The motion timestamp said 2004 a.m. He hadn't said anything about a call-out. He hadn't said anything at all. He had turned his phone face down on the nightstand, the way you do when you're tired, or when you're tired, or when you're not. I could have woken him. I didn't. I slid my hand under the blanket toward the baby monitor app and scrolled to the cloud clips. Our monitor hears through walls better than most marriages. At 1:26, the mic had picked up a door, a whisper, a zipper. At 1:28, the monitor caught the low trill of my HOA fob being pressed and the small rattle of the keyring against the front door lock. I closed the clip and opened another app I barely use. Our HOA had fake brave ideas about safety and had installed a cloud reader that logs fobs at the pool gate. The log said 8284 opened the gate at 1033. Mine. I hadn't left the bed. I went to the window. Anchorage puts its own light in the sky when there shouldn't be any. The empty street looked like a stage no one had swept. The foreclosed house's porch light was on, bright, dumb. I closed the curtain and sat on the edge of the bed. Reed exhaled and turned his face into the pillow. I waited until he came back, which he did at 3012 quietly. He slid into the bed and gave the mattress the sort of apology movement you make when you mean well and also are busy lying to someone. I'm not a detective. I am a nurse. I know the way numbers spike before a body admits it's sick, the way monitors tell on you before you tell on yourself. I slept in pieces and woke greasy, the kind of tired that sticks. At 7, I made coffee and ran a finger under the edge of the bank envelope on the counter. The mortgage bill was due Friday. I tapped my phone and opened the app for the lock at the empty house. It's a property I shouldn't have access to. I do because I sit on the HOA board, and volunteers are a currency that gets you codes to things you don't want, like pump rooms and garbage enclosures and vacant homes whose realtor forgot to change the default. The activity log is a diary anyone can read. 1031 unlock. 30,004 lock. In between, a thermostat app I didn't know was attached to that address had pinged a set point change from 50 to 70. At 2040, a motion front entry notice from a camera that didn't used to be there. So someone had added a camera. Someone had added a thermostat. Someone was using a place no one lived to live. Reed walked into the kitchen and kissed the top of my head with a mouth that hadn't slept enough. "It's iced over on the east side of the block," he said. "Be careful." "You went out," I said. "Emergency," he said. Mike had a breaker trip. His mom's space heater was on the same run. He was panicking. "Call me next time," I said. "It was nothing," he said, rooting in the drawer for a clean lanyard badge for his job site, as if he were the one who had shifts. "Use our fob next time too," I said. He looked up too quick. "What?" "Our pool gate," I said. "It has a log." He shrugged. "I don't swim at 3 a.m., he said. "Someone does," I said, "using my fob." The baby monitor on the counter lit with our son's face, the slow blink of a boy who trusts the day. Reed reached out and flicked the screen off. He said we'd talk after work and then kissed me again, differently. He left a coffee ring on the counter and a list of small explanations hanging in the air like decorations you forget to take down. Anchorage runs on errands and emergencies. My day ran on IVs, intubations, and a charting backlog that tried to drown me before lunch. I kept seeing the light in that empty house. I kept hearing Reed's truck. When I finally had 10 minutes to sit, I opened the bank app again and stared at the historical transactions the way you stare at a rash and tell yourself it'll fade. There were Zelle transfers to a business I didn't recognize, Northern Guest Services, $300 and $400 at a time, cleaning fee in the memo. There were Square deposits from two different names, Sable Creek LLC and Taryn Stays, landing in our joint checking, small and steady, 168.27, 233.40, 232.91, with Sunday timestamps like turnover. Then there were cash withdrawals on Wednesdays in neat numbers you make with an ATM because you don't want to do math in the dark. I scrolled farther back and found confusing friends, a U-Haul rental, 2 sets of linens from Target at 11:522 p.m., a Costco run with 4 pillow sets and 6 bath mats, a Venmo to Taryn K with a house emoji and utility split. I went outside into the hospital parking lot where the snow squeaked the way it only squeaks when it's colder than you should be breathing. I sat in my car and opened Airbnb. It's muscle memory. I search for places when I need to imagine sleeping somewhere else. I typed our zip code and tapped the map. There it was, a listing with a clean photo of the foreclosed house from an angle that hid the plywood. The title was too cute, Minimalist Hideaway Near Trails. The host's name was Taryn. Profile photo, a cropped shoulder and half a jawline, the way people post when they want to be recognized by the right person and not by the rest. The amenities listed, smart lock, self check-in, great for remote work. I scrolled pics and counted the towels in the bathroom shot. 4. Our Costco pack had 6. 2 must be in the wash or on someone else's body. The calendar showed last night booked. The reviews were new, all within 2 months, all with a certain sameness. Easy check-in, warm space, quiet block. I looked at the pricing and did a little math in the corner of my mind. I reserve for tips and bills and whether we can afford snowfall removals this year. If the place were booked 3 nights a week at that rate, it would explain a lot of Square deposits. It would explain why my HOA inbox was full of alerts about trash cans out on the wrong days. It would explain why our son's therapy bill had been paid late last month, the email resting like a wet jacket on my brain. I called Mike to see if his mom had been warm. He said he hadn't had a breaker trip. He said he'd been asleep. He said the only emergency was his dog needing to pee at 2, and he'd handled it. I hung up and stared at the steering wheel. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to be the wife who made a list of wrongs and crossed each one off with a smile and a gentle punch to my own arm. I wanted to go home and bring it up and have Reed laugh and show me something on his phone that made the story go away. I wanted anything but the slow sediment of evidence I had begun to collect. We met in our own kitchen because where else do you meet someone you made a life with? I put the printout of the Airbnb listing on the table like a quiz. I set my phone face up with the lock activity log on display. I did not raise my voice. He looked at the photo of the house, and then at me, and then at the baby monitor as if it would save him. "It's for us," he said. "It's an investment." "You're renting a house we don't own," I said. "It's empty," he said. "No one cares. It's better than squatters. We keep it clean." "You used our fob to let people in after hours," I said. "You used the HOA gate to go in the back and open the side door. You set the thermostat and the cameras. You dragged my name across an app like it belongs to a stranger." "It's cash we need," he said. "Your shifts are more than full-time. My hours get cut in winter. This keeps us even." "You're not even with me," I said. "Who is Taryn?" He did the little Frenchmen do when you open a door they didn't see. "A friend," he said. "She does the cleaning and the messages. She knows Airbnb. I don't know that side." "She knows you," I said. He didn't answer. He looked at the baby monitor again, as if our son would wake up and distract me by needing something only I could give. I told him to stop. I told him to take down the listing. I told him to return the lock to a code we had permission to use. I told him to stop running guests past our neighbor's Ring camera at 2 a.m. because they had sent the HOA a clip and I was the HOA. I told him to stop using the HOA fob I use to make sure the pool chemical levels are safe for other people's children's skin. He said he would. He said he was trying to keep us afloat. He said words like hustle and side income, and I wanted to throw coffee at them. 2 days later, I woke to the rustle of a notification from a credit card we don't use much because it's the one with the tempting points. It said, in its cheerful bank voice, "Your statement is ready." There was a charge on it, not huge but ugly. a monthly subscription for a property management app, another for a Wi-Fi plan at an address that wasn't ours, a third for a service that verifies IDs for short-term rentals, another Square deposit, smaller this time, like a person out of breath, a Venmo from Taryn with a lightning bolt and a note, split after late checkout. I made coffee and didn't drink it. I pulled a copy of Reed's truck insurance card out of my glove compartment and called the number on the back. People forget that old-school insurers still log movements to help reconstruct accidents. Did they have dashcam telematics? They did. Could I see route logs for our vehicle last week because we were checking something about a trip? If Reed wasn't calling, could they send an export to the primary policyholder? They could, because it was me. The route lines drooped across our neighborhood like strings of a puppet. Midnight runs to the foreclosed house. A straight shot to another address on the other side of our subdivision, a newer development, a different empty house I suddenly recognized from a complaint email about noise on a weeknight and cigarette butts in the snow. Another listing in Taryn stays, same towels. At just about the same time, my mother texted to ask how we were doing and if we were coming on Sunday. I had never been more grateful for my mother's habit of asking questions the same way for 12 years. I said we were fine and that I'd bring dessert. Then I stared at my phone and ached for an adultier adult to hand me a good sentence. I got my hands on the deed records online because the municipality of Anchorage is better at transparency than marriages are. The empty houses were bank-owned, pending sale. Both had default codes set at installation. Both had been claimed in the property apps by devices I didn't recognize, but were linked to an email address with our last name and a dot and Taryn's rdelgado.taryn at a domain I'd seen on one of the property management invoices. I searched it and found a website put together in an afternoon by someone who is good at colors and terrible at hiding a lie. Northern Guest Services. Local, clean, discreet. There was a contact number at the bottom. I called it from a coworker's phone in the break room while I ate a granola bar like it owed me rent. A woman answered. Her voice had a smile in it and something hungry under it. "Northern," she said. "I need to check in early," I said, watching my hands like they belonged to someone else. "I'm at the hideaway near Trails. My host is Taryn." "Oh," she said, quick, polite, professional. "We can do early check-in today. The cleaner is there now." "Is Reed there too?" I asked. A pause. Tiny. Wrong. "We don't give out our team's personal information," she said. I hung up. I stared at the microwave door and my reflection inside it. For a second, I saw not me, but a story. I would never tell my son until he was grown and had someone sitting across from him he loved enough to keep him still. I confronted Reed again that night with less patience. I brought up our son's therapy bill and the mortgage. I brought up the bank notices. He said he'd fix it. He said he'd fix everything. He said, "Give me a week." "I'll give you 3 days," I said. "Then I call code enforcement, the HOA, the bank, the realtor, and if we need to, the police. If you drag my name through these apps one more time, I will drag this whole thing into the light." He put both hands on the table like that would steady something. "It's not a crime," he said. "You learned how to open locks that weren't yours for work," I said. "You used my fob to avoid a camera at the front entrance. You are running an illegal rental in houses that belong to someone else and collecting money for it. You're an electrician, not a landlord, and I'm a nurse, not your alibi." He looked like a man trying to choose the right answer on a test he didn't study for. He said he loved me. He said he loved our son. He said I was blowing this out of proportion. He said Taryn was a friend who had a better sense of how apps work than we do. He said we could make enough to pay off the credit cards and maybe even take a trip somewhere where winter is a rumor, not a fact. I slept in our son's room on the floor with my phone face down like a shield. On day 3, a letter from the HOA arrived addressed to me with my title, board member, printed next to my name like a joke. It listed complaints: cars in and out late at night, trash blowing down the alley, cigarette butts near the snow berm, dog waste in yards. It cited rules. It threatened fines. It said the board would be inspecting the block Saturday morning. I poured a small anger into that letter that had nothing to do with the houses and everything to do with the way people like to pretend the problem is aesthetics, not ethics. I took my evidence folder to the HOA president's house that night and put it on her kitchen island. She's a woman who likes order because life took it from her once and never apologized. I showed her the logs, I showed her the doorbell clips, I showed her the bank deposits and the property websites and the listings. I did not show her my marriage. That was not hers. She promised she'd bring code enforcement and the realtor. She promised she would not put my name in any email that went beyond her. She was as good as her promise for exactly 12 hours. She was as good as her promise for exactly 12 hours. When code enforcement came Saturday morning with their orange tape and their practice-neutral voices, Reed did not run. He stood on the snowy sidewalk with his hands in his pockets and watched and nodded like a man who had been told his options and picked the only one that seemed to leave his ribs intact. Taryn wasn't there. She had sent 3 frantic texts asking if she should take down the listings, as if you can unring a house bell. The bank's realtor appeared too, hair perfect, boots better than Alaska, and watched the orange tape go up around her sign like it was performing for her. She asked which app, as if we all don't know it is always the same app to start, though the real money is always moving elsewhere. Code enforcement wrote a notice and posted it near the knob. The neighbors watched through blinds and dogs barked, and I tried not to throw up. Reed said nothing to them because people like him know that words are a currency and silence keeps you rich. He said to me quietly, "We're going to lose everything because you couldn't let me fix it." I said, "We're going to lose less than we would if I let you keep going." He left that afternoon. He didn't slam the door. He packed a bag and set it on the passenger seat like a permission slip and drove down toward Northern Lights as if he had errands to do there. He sent a text 3 hours later that said, "Staying with a friend for a few days?" I didn't ask which friend. I called a lawyer whose name lives on my fridge under my mother's phone number. He told me to print everything and not to text things I didn't want to read in a courtroom. He told me to ask for temporary orders if Reed moved out. He told me to ask for temporary orders if Reed moved out. There's a rush that comes after the first big fight, the way your body says, "I know how to run even if you sit very still." I cleaned the house and made chicken and took our son to the library to pull board books off shelves. I made hot cocoa with cinnamon because he thinks it means Christmas. I lay on the floor with him and watched the ceiling fan make shapes. I dozed off and woke up to a sound from the baby monitor in the kitchen I now hate because it hears what you don't want it to hear. 2 voices and a key. The front door opened. I sat up too fast and made the toys rattle. "Harper," a voice called. "Taryn." I'd only ever heard it through a phone speaker. In person, it had an edge. "We should talk." "We shouldn't," I said, coming into the kitchen. She stood with one hand on the counter like it could be a stage. She was the profile photo, but more. Pretty in the way the city rewards, which is to say, she'd figured out which part of her face to lead with. She set a manila envelope on the island and untucked a paper from it like she was showing me a menu. "What is that?" I asked. "An agreement," she said. "A partnership outline. We need to regularize. We'll put everything under Northern. No reason to make enemies. There are ways to do this that are amicable." "You broke into the houses," I said. "You used my fob. You ran guests past my neighbors and put my name in the log. You owe the bank money you haven't counted yet. You owe my son's sleep. You owe me an apology you don't know how to make." She didn't flinch. "Reed said you cared about the money. You care about your title. You care about not being embarrassed. This makes us all whole." "My title is Mom," I said. "My embarrassment is none of your business." She shrugged, as if I were being sentimental. She slid the envelope closer. The partnership agreement was a template, printed off a website with names slotted in like Lego men. There were blanks where the revenue share should go. There was a notary stamp on the last page, faint, like a ghost. I slid the paper back. "Take your envelope," I said. "Take down your listings. Take your towels off the rod. If you step on my porch again, you won't need to worry about code enforcement. You can talk to the police." She left. She shut the door like a person who is confident it will open for her again. A week later, a certified letter arrived from a law office I didn't recognize. It demanded that I cease disparaging Northern Guest Services and Taryn and cease harassing Reed's business. It included screenshots of a neighborhood forum where someone with a screen name suspiciously like a cousin of mine had posted about the orange-taped houses. It included a threat to sue for damages. It included, as attachments, screenshots of my HOA emails as if they were evidence of my treachery. My lawyer laughed when he read it, and then he didn't. He said we would draft a response. He said we would attach our own screenshots. He said we would include the route logs and the lock activity and the thermostat pings and the bank statements and the listing photos with my neighbor's lawn caught in the edge. He said we would CC the bank. I kept working. I ran tube feedings, comforted mothers who couldn't hold their babies yet, untangled lines and soothed alarms and told new dads where the coffee was and how to sit without breaking the rocker. I tried to turn the piece of my brain that thinks about evidence into the piece that protects tiny lungs. I slept in stretches and let my mother take our son 2 nights a week. The bank sent an inspector and then a letter that read like it wanted to be kind and had a lawyer over its shoulder. They would not pursue us for long-term damages. They would be pursuing someone. They did not say who. The HOA fined us enough to make me feel it, but not enough to drown us. They needed me in the chair next month when the pool heater bids came in. I sat in the chair and I did the job, and then I went home and cried in the laundry room because it is the place in our house with the most solid door. Reed came by on a Tuesday when the light over the mountains makes the snow look like it has its own pulse. He stood in the kitchen and didn't touch anything and said the thing men say when they are assembling their own absolution. I never meant for this. I didn't say, you meant it nightly for 3 months. I didn't say, you meant it when you bought towels. I didn't say, you meant it when you put my fob in your pocket. I didn't say the sentence I was practicing for court, I'm requesting temporary custody and exclusive use of the house. I said, what are you going to do? I'm going to make it right, he said, which means nothing until it is attached to an action. I gave him a list. Pay the fines, refund the guests, sign an agreement that you will not run any rental business in this city under any name for a year. Give me your fob, call Taryn and tell her she doesn't speak for this house. He laughed at the list, and then, when I didn't laugh, he took out his phone and started texting. He did some of it. He paid the fines with a card I think had his mother's name on it. He refunded the last 2 bookings. He gave me the fob I knew he had already duplicated. He called Taryn from the porch and said words that sounded like a boy practicing being a man. She posted a long thread online about local women who hate other women, who hustle, and I wish the internet were a person I could take to small claims court. 2 months later, after 4 hearings and 1 bad day in a hallway when I saw a version of myself I don't like in a glass door, we had orders that said our son's name with respect and our names with punctuation. Reed had visitation that fit around my shifts. The bank had moved on to other targets because banks are sharks and always moving. Code enforcement had 2 new guys, so I had to explain what orange tape means to them again. The HOA elected a new treasurer who thinks gloves solve everything. Taryn opened a listing across town under a different LLC with worse photos and a new profile picture. I sent a screenshot to my lawyer and he told me to resist the urge to become a vigilante. Here is the thing about evidence. It's there whether or not you collect it. You don't make it by looking. You find it. You name it. You put it on a table and decide if you can stay married to someone who calls it a misunderstanding. You decide if you can become someone who calls it a misunderstanding in order to stay married. You tell the truth quietly at the kitchen island with the baby monitor lit and the slow blink of a boy who will one day ask you to explain what he lived through. What I tell him is simple. Your dad loved you and lied to me. Those things can sit in the same room. He used things that weren't ours, and he learned that when grown-ups do that, the city puts orange tape on them and sometimes takes their toys. We made a rule about keys and a rule about fobs. We made a rule about how we treat the houses where other people sleep. We made a rule that if you think you need to do something at night to keep us afloat, you say it in the day. We kept the house. We sold the extra truck. I took a second weekend shift, and we got a neighbor to sit with our son for 2 hours on Sundays so I could take a nap that wasn't a fight. I got a check in the mail from the bank 6 months later for an amount small enough to be insulting and big enough to buy a new set of towels. I bought blue ones. I keep the old ones in the garage for wiping down boots. Anchorage moved on, as cities do. The trail stayed. The light kept doing what it does after 2 p.m. in winter. I still hear the click of the HOA gate in my sleep sometimes. I still check the baby monitor, even though our son is big enough to climb the couch and ask for waffles like a person who owns the morning. I still keep a folder on my desktop called Logs where I put anything that looks like a lie trying to be a receipt. I still stand at the window at 2 a.m. Sometimes. Just to see the snow, just to decide if I'm the kind of woman who thinks darkness makes better decisions. Would you tell the HOA and code enforcement if your partner built a secret side hustle that used other people's homes? Or would you try to keep the family name clean and hope it fades? If someone swears the hustle is for us, when do you believe them and when do you change the locks and call a lawyer? If you want more stories like this, like and subscribe.